Hi there, and thanks for tuning in to another of our regular videos. In this month's video, I promised we'd do it a little differently. We said we'd try and answer a few of the most common questions that we're getting from sellers and buyers at the moment. Now, what I would say is, as estate agents, we deal with property sales and purchases day in and day out. So there isn't much that we haven't come across. But for yourselves, this might be the first time you've moved in years and years, or it might even be the first time you've ever moved. So, it is really important that you do ask lots of questions. There are no silly questions, and it is really important to do your research. The second thing I will say is the property market is ever changing, and that can impact how buyers and sellers should approach things. For example, maybe the last time you moved, it was quite a while ago, and buyers were few and far between. Properties were taking quite a while to sell. However, at the moment, as you might have heard me say, if you've listened to some of our recent videos, the property market is really quite buoyant for certain types of properties, and that perhaps is something you need to take into account in how you approach things. So anyway, with all that said, the first question we're going to tackle, and this is an age-old question, one of the most common questions we get as estate agents, particularly from people who are selling a property for the first time, and it is, should I find a property to buy before I put my own property on the market? Now, I'm going to let you into a little secret and tell you that when I last moved, I needed to be able to sell mine to be able to buy on. And I did what estate agents will usually tell you not to do. And that is, I went to view a property before mine was even on the market. The sellers were a lovely couple. The house had been on the market for a while, to be fair. They just reduced the price. So I noticed it. I asked the estate agent if I could view. They spoke to the sellers and they very kindly said, yes, you can come and have a look. We loved it. That's when the panic set in because we needed to find a buyer for our house before we could be in a position to proceed. Obviously, the sellers of the property that we'd seen couldn't be expected to reserve that property for us because they had no idea how long it would take us to actually find a buyer for our property. We hoped it would sell quickly, but you can never be sure. For us, thankfully, it did all turned out very well. It was a happy ending. We managed to sell our property very quickly, and then we made an offer which got accepted. But we were very fortunate, really, because somebody else could have swooped in, which would have left us really disappointed that we'd missed out on our dream home. And another thing that people can overlook in the emotion of it all sometimes is that we had to offer full asking price straight off the bat to secure this property. And then we had to go away and be ultra competitive with the asking price on our home. And perhaps if there was a little bit less urgency in our situation, we might have been able to sell our property for more. Truth be told, for us, the main priority was trying to secure a sale to a good buyer very quickly, but I'm just trying to give an honest account of how things went when we did this a few years ago. Now, I think even though it did work out for me in my situation, I think really as estate agents, we would advise that ideally you do get your property on the market and get a buyer in place before you do start viewing properties. Do, of course, be upfront with buyers that come and show an interest in your property. You want to manage their expectations. Tell them you need to find a property to buy. You don't want to feel rushed and pressured and then end up going for a property that you'll end up regretting. But once you've got a buyer in place for your house, you're then in a really strong position. You then look like that serious and committed buyer, and that gives you a real advantage. So, of course, quite a long answer there, but I just wanted to give you both sides of the coin. Now, another question that can come up sometimes is, you've offered the asking price, so why hasn't your offer been accepted? Well, there could be a number of reasons for this, and I suppose the first thing to obviously do is to try and ask for an explanation, to try and find out why. But it is worth bearing in mind that a seller doesn't have to accept an offer from anybody just because it is asking price. If the seller is receiving a lot of interest in their property, then they may feel confident that their property could attract even higher offers, and this might end up being one of those situations where there are multiple bidders and the property goes over asking price. Great for sellers, of course, but not ideal for buyers. Conversely, a seller may reject an asking price offer in favour of a lower offer. Now, this can be quite hard to get your head around, but the seller may feel more confident in another bidder's position. Perhaps they don't need to sell a property, they're in no chain, or maybe they don't need to obtain a mortgage. Ultimately, a seller can choose to accept whichever bid they prefer. Now, following on from this, the last question I'm going to try and answer today is, should I offer the asking price? Now, you should remember here that estate agents act for the seller. They are ultimately paid by the seller and have a duty to act in the seller's best interest, which is usually to get the best outcome for them, maybe get the best price for them in the ideal time frame for the seller. But as a buyer, there are a couple of things you really need to be sure about. Firstly, can you afford it, and are you not overstretching yourself? And secondly, is it worth it, and are you not overpaying? Do your research. Buying a home is likely to be the single biggest purchase you'll ever make. So we hope you found these questions and answers to be useful. If you are thinking of moving in 2025, why not get in touch with us? We're here 8 till 8, 7 days a week. Thanks for watching.